team stopped at Cooperstown. Our manager wanted to make sure we stopped and saw the Hall of Fame. I had never been there. At the time, there was a section of the Hall of Fame called the Negro League section. We were there for 5 hours, and in listening to the audio and reading the plaques and the information that was available, I came out of there realizing a few different things. There were a lot of people who came before me that paved the way for me to be doing literally what I'm doing at the moment. Recognize they were committed in the same way that I needed to be in leaving the game better for those who came after me. And the light came on from there and refocused me a bit.
All right, so Tony, number one, I can't thank you enough for coming on my podcast. I want to tell everybody a little bit about why you're on here. So when we were in New York, I was meeting with Bruce, and you and I had an opportunity of talking really just about the youth game.
Sure.
And I shared with you a little bit about what I'm doing. And you said, it's interesting because the Players Association now recognizes the importance of kind of reaching down into the youth. As I think about kind of who you are in the game, I feel like you're kind of the biggest advocate for players today. So I felt like it was perfect to get you on the podcast. But I wanted, before I kind of jump into things, I want to touch a little bit about a book that I read in college. So before I became an agent, I read a book, you're probably familiar with it, called A Whole Different Ball Game by Marvin Miller. Mm-hmm. Marvin obviously was the man who started the MLBPA, yep, along with many players back in 1966, if I'm not mistaken. So this book, and the reason why I bring it up is I feel like whether you're a player, an agent today, somebody who has aspirations of maybe getting into the agent business, or even as a player wanting to know, what are we all doing here? I feel like that is such an important book. But you are now, I guess, somebody who has taken the baton from Marvin. And tell everybody a little bit about, obviously you played the game of baseball. And a lot of people, I feel like, may not even know that. Tell people a little bit about kind of your journey through the game as a player and how you got into this position that you are today.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to be on. Greatly appreciate being here today. My path is probably not as straight as some others, meaning I was fortunate enough to be a decent athlete in high school, and I was a basketball guy in high school, but perhaps more a baseball guy than the other way around. And I actually was going to college and ended up going to college to play basketball, but at the same time ended up getting drafted for baseball. And so,
pretty good, by the way, second overall in the draft, I think, right?
Yeah. Right place, right time. But the Tigers who drafted me afforded me an opportunity to go to school and play basketball. So from September 1st until the end of May, I'd go to school and I'd play basketball. And then from June 1st through the end of August, I'd play minor league baseball. And so I did that for the first few years. Back surgery, though, ended up getting me off the hardwood and had me focus in on baseball full time. So basketball is what I thought I was going to be doing. Ended up playing baseball, and I'm grateful for that. But as I mentioned, more a basketball guy than a baseball guy. So I had a lot to learn. Learning wasn't just on the field, though, for me. It was off the field as well. And the light came on for me when I was in short season A-ball in Niagara Falls, New York. And we had an off day. We were playing in Oneonta that next day. And our team stopped at Cooperstown on the way to Oneonta. Our manager wanted to make sure we stopped and saw the Hall of Fame. I had never been there. And so that day, stopped in, and it opened up a whole new world for me. Yes, those are the best players in the game, but at the time, there was a section of the Hall of Fame called the Negro League section. And so it was in that section where we were there for 5 hours. I think I spent 3.5, 4 of them in that section.
Wow.
There was a history there I just didn't know. And in listening to the audio and reading the plaques and the information that was available, I came out of there realizing a few different things. One was there were a lot of people who came before me that paved the way for me to be doing literally what I'm doing at the moment. But as such, recognize that as a black ball player, I had a responsibility too. They paved the way for me. The things they endured were night and day compared to what it is that I had to work through on my way up. But they were committed in the same way that I needed to be in leaving the game better for those who came after me. And so that visit, that time at the Hall of Fame, in that section, understanding and learning the history of and the reason why I had the opportunity to be doing what I was doing, the light came on from there and refocused me a bit. Not on the field. The on the field stuff was there, but appreciating that there was something bigger going on here that I needed to appreciate, respect, and take hold of as I moved through, Lord willing, the minor league system and played in the big leagues.
And so you get to the big leagues in 95, which, I mean, that's right on the heels, or I guess right after the strike was over. Was that a moment that impacted, or I guess created this interest in wanting to be a part of the PA? Or was there another moment during your career that was the introduction, I guess?
So it was a combination of that visit that I mentioned to the Hall of Fame and then what you just highlighted. So 94, ironic enough, being drafted in 94 was my first full season because I was always going to school and playing basketball.
Right.
So I wasn't in spring training. I always grabbed my glove and bat at the end of May, at the end of the school year. And so 94 was my first full year. I started out in AA and ended up having a good year in AA, and I got moved up to AAA. And there were rumblings about me getting called up. And then the strike hit in August of 94. And so when that happened, the veteran guys who were on the major league team were engaging me during that process. And then finished out the year. Then I went home, and at the time I was living in San Diego, and there were former players, or there were active players that were in San Diego who were making sure I had what I needed, that I wasn't scrambling. If I needed to work out, I had a place to work out. If I needed bills that needed to be paid, I had bills that I had the money to do so, making sure I had food on the table, that I was continuing to work. That was all happening in the background while we were on strike for the 232 days that we were. And so the next spring, you may recall, they had replacement players and people crossing the line. And again, the veteran guys were making sure, one, that I wasn't one of them, and two, that I understood why I shouldn't be one of them, and three, that I understood that when the music started back up, the responsibility I had and why I had it. And so that 94, 95 off season, coming back to spring with an abbreviated year that year because we started late, was an eye opener for me. So understood more of the history and why I had the opportunity that I did, and understood more in real time what was happening in our game and the responsibility I had as a result of how the veteran players took care of me. So yes, those two things shaped my willingness to get involved a year later as a player rep on the team that we were on. And then that morphed into an American League rep. And then that morphed into an association rep. And so I wanted to make sure that, yes, I handled my business on the field. So I had as long a career as I possibly could, but that I had a responsibility to those who came before me. And I had a responsibility to those who came after. Being involved as a player rep meant that decisions that were going to be made on behalf of my team and then on behalf of players in the league, that I wanted to make sure their voices were heard as a part of that decision making.
So I mentioned Marvin Miller earlier. I want to talk a little bit about why the PA exists. And in order to do that, I think we need to kind of touch on a little bit about what existed before the PA, right? I'm obviously familiar with the reserve clause. For those who aren't, basically the owner of the team has complete control over you for your whole life, right? If you wanted to go play somewhere else, you couldn't. Yep. They had all the control. They had all the control over what you would make. Yep. More or less, it was take it or leave it.
Yep.
So my question for you now then is, if we have this view of what the PA was before, and now we have the view of what the PA is today, how do you help remind players how far we've come?
It's an ongoing process because there's so much turnover in our game. And unfortunately, less and less teams value the experience that a veteran player has in getting through and navigating 162 and the discipline and wherewithal that it takes to perform over a number of years at that high level over the course of 162. And as such, you have less and less veteran players who may have experienced what yesterday looked like that can share those stories. So I was very fortunate when I did get up to the big leagues, where I was surrounded by veteran players on the heels of the longest strike that we ever had. So I was swimming in what our history was and why our history was, and thus the responsibility. You flash forward, and unfortunately, there's not as much of that reflected in the experiences that our guys have, at least until recently.
Yeah.
And so it's important to make sure that guys realize, that how we got here didn't just happen overnight. There are players, a lot of players who lost salary, who lost their careers, who lost service time, to ensure not just the well-being of the guys that were playing at the time, but guys like myself who came after, and then guys who have come after me. You have to offer those stories. And oftentimes it's going to be the result of, here's why we have salary arbitration.
Right.
Let me tell you where that came from. Or here's why you have something as simple as a 7-7. Here's where that came from. Or here is your pension and your 401k. This is why you have that. And so you try to have those conversations as often as you can, or interject that history as often as you can. But it's the guys have a day job. The day job now is more complicated than it's ever been. And there's a lot more in the way of distractions that can pull you away from that day job. And so if you're not having conversations before the game, or you're not in the locker room having conversations after the game, or you're not having conversations on the road or on the plane when you're traveling between cities, or if you're not, in the trenches and grinding during the off season where you're in the same place and you can have those conversations, it needs to be interjected in one fashion or another. And so it's a constant trying to ensure that guys understand why we have what we have today, that it didn't magically show up, and that if you're not careful, it will magically disappear.
That's right.
If you don't have an appreciation and respect for how the cake was made over decades of sacrifice and commitment by the players that came before.
So then let's talk about, what is the PA, right? Like, what are the central tenets to the Major League Baseball Players Association? Like, how do you view those things?
So the headline there is our responsibility is to protect, defend, and advance the rights and interests of our members. That is what the headline is. There are a lot of different pieces of the puzzle that fall underneath each of those moving pieces. But fundamentally, that's what our job is every day, 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And our collective bargaining agreement is the main thing. That will always be the main thing, meaning what we negotiate on behalf of players and alongside players that sits atop their individual player contracts is what's going to govern your careers during the window of time that you're fortunate enough to play. And if an average career is give or take 4 years, a CBA, a collective bargaining agreement, has historically been, at least of the last 30 years or so, a 5-year agreement. That means that agreement is literally covering, on average, most of the players that are going to play during that period of time. And so it becomes very important to make sure that you get that agreement right, to ensure that our players are in the best position possible to maximize their value on the field and off the field, and then are in a position to be successful once the music stops, on behalf of themselves and on behalf of their families.
So what's interesting is, I feel like, when we think about the creation of the PA in 66, right? Almost, was it 60 years ago? It was a long time ago.
Yep.
The game has obviously changed in that time. And I feel like, at least how it feels to me, is the game is becoming much more personalized. Less of a team game, more of a personal game. And so naturally, I feel like the players will start thinking in that manner also. And so I only imagine that one of your challenges must be, how do we create this continual collection of voices so that everybody ultimately is kind of pulling in the right direction?
Right.
I guess there's not a question there. It's more of just an acknowledgement of, like, I have to imagine that that's a challenge. One of the things that I do want to talk to you though about is, before this, we were talking about kind of the bridge. I brought up a specific story. So a client of mine, Austin Riley, am fortunate enough to represent him. And as I was negotiating his contract, it was really a moment where he said to me, Matt, I want to fully understand, what is this contract, if we agree to it? What is the impact that this contract is going to have? on the players coming after me. And it was a special moment because most of the time players are thinking, hey, if this money is what I think I should sign for, like, let me have the money. And here was a player who was about to agree to a life-changing money, and he was thinking about the players coming after him. How do you handle that, navigating that? How do you remind players of that? What does that look like?
Well, we're grateful, to say the least, that Austin is who Austin is. And we have a number of those guys. And I share that to say it's why it's important for Austin in his locker room there in Atlanta to be available to talk to guys and to answer questions about why he does think that and where that comes from. Because it's not an accident, is my assumption. In other words, whether you're top down or bottom up, the game has changed, and the focal points, meaning what's most important, at least to some of the decision makers on the baseball side, highlights the individuality. And so in an industry where players are commoditized, they're commoditized, they're turned into numbers. It's easy to have players focused in on what their specific numbers are. And so when you go to salary arbitration and they spit out a bunch of numbers and you're sitting before an arbitration panel, what your contract is going to be for that upcoming year is largely in part predicated on what the numbers on a piece of paper are. But when you have non-baseball people making baseball decisions, you're only focused in on the numbers. You're not focused in on what I referenced earlier, which is, I know what the numbers say, but how is this guy in the clubhouse? How is this guy in the community? What type of character does this guy have? Over the course of 162, what does that look like? What does it look like over multiple years? What confidence does he have in himself and thus in his ability to not just do his job, but positively affect those that he's surrounded by? A guy like Austin can do all of those things. That's why, not just on the field, he has value that transcends all the crooked numbers that he puts up year in and year out. But the atmosphere that we are in, whether you're a young player who's going through the youth system and is showcase, inherent in the name is you are showcasing your ability, or whether you're at the professional level where you're a number on a piece of paper, and that paper and those numbers are going to dictate in some fashion or another, at least for a number of folks who don't have any concern for the people that are involved here, that's going to determine your value. When that becomes the focus, me, how fast I throw, how far I can hit a ball, and what my exit velo is, and how fast I run, well, then those are the only things that matter. Well, we're a team sport played by people and humans, and so it can't just be about the data point. And so you're constantly having to engage and remind guys, because it's no longer inherent, that they're a part of something that's bigger to them, and they are a proverbial link of the chain that goes back 150 years, and that, Lord willing, will move forward in 150 years, where just like I have on my bracelet, 14,372, I was the 14,372nd player that was drafted, or that got to the big leagues. Big leagues. And so for me, it was a reminder, until a couple of years ago, by the way. Now I'm 16,766, which was fine by me, but that number changed.
Right.
But it was reflective of me, of the responsibility I have to 14,371.
That's great.
And 14,373. We are connected here. And so you try to get that as a part of the conversation, to realize, yes, you have to do your job. And yes, at the end of the day, based on how well you do your job, that is going to be considered in what it is that you make. But it's much bigger than that.
So I want to pause for a moment, because I think what you just said is profound. I'm sure people are listening to this and they're thinking to themselves, like, why should, my son's 16 years old. This is so far away. God willing, if we get drafted, we'll start to care. God willing, if he gets to the big leagues, we'll start to care. What do you say to that mom or dad who doesn't really think that this should be something that they think about?
So if you are going to have a young person who's going to have a job that will have that person sitting in a room by himself doing his job, then don't pay attention to it. But my guess is the vast majority of people who are in the workplace aren't going to have a job that's solely predicated on how well they do. It's going to rely on others. And as a result of needing to rely on others to make the most of that role and to bring the most value to the organization that you're running or that you're working for, meaning workplace, not organization, baseball-wise or other sports. But wherever it is that you are working, you are going to be connected to somebody that has to be committed to the same thing that you are in order for the success to be as high as it possibly can be in the role that you have. And so unless you are going to be on an island by yourself for the next 60 years, you need to pay attention to how what you do affects others and how what others do is going to affect you, all with an eye on trying to be the best versions of yourself on behalf of the whole. So it may not make a whole lot of sense early on, but each conversation I've ever had with a parent suggests that when you talk about the importance of the team and you talk about the importance of understanding why your young person has the opportunity that they have, when you talk to those parents about the things they need to pay attention to versus the things that they don't, there's a lot of misinformation out there. And it's a big part of the reason why for us, I mentioned earlier, our job is literally to protect, defend, and advance the rights and interests of our players. Well, by extension, that takes all the politics out of it. There's no politics involved in any of that.
Right.
What is it that is going to put us in the best position to protect, defend, and then advance the well-being and initiatives of our players? What is that? Well, in doing so, connecting with mom and dad who are trying to find their way into professional ball, we're offering them the same thing, devoid of politics, devoid of whatever else can come alongside it. It is, keep this in mind because we are concerned about making sure your young person is in the best position possible to play as long as they possibly can and be as successful as they possibly can.
The reason why I think it's so important that you're here talking about this is because you played in the big leagues. Pretty good player, by the way.
Appreciate it.
You're now running the MLBPA. You had a son who played travel baseball and showcase baseball. And so you're somebody who, it doesn't matter who you are out there. If you have somebody who you know, a son, you are a player yourself, you can speak to that experience.
Yep.
So if you were talking to a 17-year-old kid today who wants to get drafted and thinks he's going to get drafted this year, what is one thing that you would want him to know? And you could tell us something from the director of the PA, you could tell us something from the player's perspective or even the dad's perspective.
It's interesting you teed up the question like that because those are different perspectives, although they all kind of feed each other. So as executive director of the Major League Baseball Players Association, I would simply introduce myself and offer what it is that we do. And at the point in time, you young person are drafted or you sign your first professional contract with affiliated ball, we are the ones alongside your individual agents that are going to be there providing support to you throughout the course of your career, regardless of what team you're on. And regardless of whether you went 0 for 4 or 4 for 4, our commitment to you doesn't change. So as executive director, I would offer that. And then if I saw the eye tinkle or twinkle, I may offer some more in regards to the history. As a former player, I would offer to you or offer to that young person that the road to reach your goal isn't necessarily a straight one, but your commitment to maximizing the opportunity that you have needs to be. And so, being away from home sometimes for the first time, or being in minor league ball and the challenges that are associated with it, all of that needs to be kept in perspective against the backdrop of the work that you need to do to put yourself in the best position possible to be successful. And oh, by the way, no matter how long you play, and Lord willing, you'll play a long time, the music's going to stop and you're going to be out of the game far longer than you were in it. And so I share with young people that I was fortunate to play in the big leagues for 15 seasons. I got kicked out of the other side at 37. Lord willing, there's a lot of life after that. But I say that to say, even if you play a long time, there's a lot of life after that. And so equipping yourself to be the CEO of your own career is going to be important. Yes, the baseball can be the main thing, but at the end of the day, you need to equip yourself to be successful at life on the field, off the field, and then definitely once your career is over with. And we're there to help you.
Tony, to help the players understand, and maybe this could be even speaking to players playing professional baseball, that I help the players understand, like, I've had the opportunity, obviously we had a great conversation before this, but really understanding how much you care. Help share like the weight that you carry trying to, bring along these players and truly wanting to set everybody up for success.
I owe everything to the game of baseball. I owe everything that my family has enjoyed and has experienced to the game of baseball. Being drafted as a 17-year-old and now being older, baseball is all I've known. I will do anything and everything to protect it because of what it means to me and what it means to my family. And as a player, as a former player, being committed to the well-being of those that come after me is important to me. Every time somebody signs a contract that is the result of how that player is performed or how it is that they think the player is going to perform, all I can think about is all of the guys that came before that provided that player, myself, and now by extension that player, that opportunity. And so for me, it is remarkably personal. And I say that to say, I had my dream job. My dream job was playing Major League Baseball. That was my dream job. And so it's devoid of, as I referenced earlier, it's devoid of politics. It's devoid of all the fluff. It's devoid of all of that. And truly is what is going to put our players in the best position possible to realize whatever it is their career is going to look like. And then, oh, by the way, in a world where baseball marriages end in divorce at an 80+% clip, how can we put our guys in a position and their families in a position to be the best versions of themselves when they're done, to protect the integrity of the whole? And so in doing so, this is a life mission, if you will, to ensure that all those that come after have it better than I did, and ensuring the well-being of you mentioned my son, who's a redshirt pitcher at Missouri at the moment, coming off a shoulder injury, pitching injury. Another conversation, perhaps for another day, but maybe for this one. And so, just ensuring that the next generation too, all the way down the chain. I wake up thinking about how best to serve the guys. I go to sleep thinking about how best to serve the guys, making sure that we have the experience and expertise on staff that's committed to the same thing. All again with the hope that whenever the music stops again for me in this chapter, can look back and know that the advances that we've made as an organization, as we've made as a player group, and that each next generation that's come after, much like the foundation that was laid by Marvin, we've continued to build on that in a way that our guys and our organization are in good hands.
So I want to talk a little bit about what's at stake, right? What's at stake if players don't want to stay connected? What's at stake if the next generation coming up feels like, whatever, not that big of a deal. I just want to play baseball and I'll make life-changing money eventually. It'll figure itself out. What would you say to them?
It's interesting. We used to use the example until 2022. We used to use the example, if anybody wants to know what life is like without a union, look at how they treat the minor league players. That used to land for all the guys that came through the minor leagues and appreciating the chaos that was. Well, it's a little bit better now, but the reason that it's a little bit better
just
now...
Just a little, by the way.
Having everyone under one umbrella has affected some positive change there, and we still got a lot of work to do, but I liken it to when I talk to the minor league guys that 66 was when we first started in the iteration that we're in now, and 2 years later was when we negotiated our first collective bargaining agreement in 1968. Well, guys, we did our first minor league collective bargaining agreement 150 days after we organized, and so we're at that stage and we're working through it, but building on it from there. And so, Marvin, though, we keep using his name on the wall here. It says the secret to the success of the MLBPA is no secret. It's in the solidarity of its members. When you think about the first CBA that was done and the commitment to benefits and the pension and all of the fights, there were there were 3 work stoppages in the 70s. There were another 3 in the 80s over similar issues, but a little bit different. And then we had the 94-95 strike. Each of those work stoppages, if any young person looks back at the timeline and they see a strike or a lockout, it was over an issue that players believed was important to draw a line in the sand on. And those players at that time believed that it was important for them and it was important for those that came after. And so everything literally that we have as players right now, good and bad, because no CBA is perfect, is literally the result of a commitment to the generation before and ensuring the well-being of those that come after. And so for a player today, if you are a part of that fraternity, and you are, if you want to be the group that is known for or acknowledged as the group that forgot what yesterday was and why it is that it's no longer important because you want to move forward this direction, that's going to be documented. And so for me, I tell people I'm grateful that I came in during the 94-95 strike. And it doesn't sound like those two things should reconcile, should go together. But I say it because it literally paved the way for my understanding of how important this is. And as much as you want to continue to move forward, if you're not careful and you make a decision at the bargaining table that takes back a certain area of the agreement, the fight to try to recoup that over to the next generations of players is going to be remarkably difficult. So yes, I just want to play, Skip. Yes, I've got stuff that I want to do. And yes, I want to play 10 years and I want to make hundreds of millions. Get all of that. But I think the one thing our fraternity has always done, it has always had good player leadership. It has always had leadership that has explained to those that may not be as interested the importance of the role that they have and the responsibility that they have in ensuring the well-being of the game moving forward. And we have yet to sit in a bargaining room and not have that be a driving force. And so, yes, the climate has changed. Yes, the focus has changed. And yes, the experiences have changed. But the fundamentals will remain the same this time and moving forward. And we'll ensure that guys hear it. Whether they want to hear it or not, they're going to hear it. And they're going to hear it from the guys that have been there, done that, active players that have been there, done it, as well as those that have been there before.
Well, I think players need to ultimately realize, like, yeah, I know you want to play baseball. I get it. But part of being a professional is accepting this responsibility too.
Yeah.
Right?
And look, I mean, again, we recognize too, in any one locker room, there are guys that literally they just want to play. Tony, I'm not interested in all that. And we understand that. And then there are guys in the locker room that are interested in some of it, but not all of it. And there are guys who are just getting there who are trying to stick. And so they're not really focused in on all that. I'll cross that bridge when I get there. And then there are veteran guys that have kind of been through it and where they get how all the moving pieces fit and are engaging the guys in their club. We understand that dynamic. And so what's important, and we've talked about this earlier, is that we wholeheartedly believe that educated players make educated decisions. And so you're providing as much education as you possibly can and hoping that it sticks along the way, but you're repeating it over and over and over again. And as I share with guys, each next time you hear it, it'll make more sense than it did the last time. But initially, you sit down in one of our meetings and you're just drinking from a fire hose and it gets to the point where you're, okay, what time I got to get in the cage? Right. You get all of that. But the hope is the constant connection and engagement and touch points and communications, both from us and from the agents that represent them. There's enough continuity there and consistency in the messaging that puts our players in the best position possible to negotiate the best deal possible.
So I got in the business in 2001, and it felt like in 2001, if you would have asked me back then, at what stage in a player's career do you feel like they truly start to understand the impact of the union? I would say it's probably, even though they've been on the 40-man roster, like they know the union, it's primarily when they get to arbitration.
Sure.
That's when I would expect. But I feel like now, with the minor leaguers now being involved, everybody is starting to have a voice much earlier, which I think is important. I think the goal, though, is how do we figure out a way to get these guys involved even earlier? And do you have any thoughts on that? What do you think the potential answer is to that?
Well, I think there's multiple answers. I think the headline, though, is what you just mentioned. How can we engage and introduce the PA and introduce the fraternity as early as possible? by having the minor leaguers under our umbrella. It affords us the ability to engage the minor league guys from day one of the time they sign their first professional contract. And then you offer what yesterday looked like versus what it is that it looks like now. And that usually resonates, all while the guys who are drafted and signed, they invariably want to get to the big leagues. So you offer some of what is tied to the big leagues too. So you create a kinetic chain, if you will, from day one through the end of their career and then beyond. But I just highlighted from the day one of when the player signs, I think there's an opportunity prior to that to engage guys who have aspirations of being professional ball players. And so having programming and availability to continue to reach down even further to where at least you're not reinventing the wheel from the standpoint of saying, okay, the Players Association is a what? They will have heard it or heard about it sooner to where, oh yeah, you're that union guy or oh yeah, I heard about the Players Association. And the sooner that you do that, the greater likelihood of that player in the next generation understanding and learning more about it sooner.
Well, and I think about the pride that players have when they finally get drafted. Hey, I'm a professional ball player.
Right.
Like and for good reason. It would be amazing to create that same level of pride, even for the younger generation, when they think, oh, like, I want to be a part of the union. And I know everybody wants to get drafted and everybody wants to get to the big leagues, but you want to be a part of the union, right? That would be a great goal, I feel like.
It would be. And it would be great to have a young person offer that at the outset. We've got a ways to go, I think, before we get there. But I wholeheartedly agree with you. But a lot of that, again, is going to be education and engagement.
You just said it, education. I totally agree with you.
It's crucial for the guys. And again, it's hard and it's becoming harder when, I was a young kid and I was a young kid who was trying to play in the big leagues or in the NBA perhaps at the time. And I understood that was my focus. I wasn't really focused in on anything else. And I told you it was later that I started to connect the dots as I heard more and read more. And so I understand that early on, it's hard to think necessarily too far down the road and have too many things running through my head that may complicate my day-to-day at that time. But one of the things that has always been crucial, and I think it will continue to be, as we've talked about today, is ensuring that guys understand what it means to be a professional athlete. Okay, here's what comes along with that. And here's what you're a part of as a result of being a professional baseball player. Here's what our history is. Not taking a history class and not going to pound the pavement with the history book, but who's your favorite player? Okay, let me tell you about your favorite player and what he did. Being able to offer that and represent it is not just going to be a one time and they're going to get it. It's going to be a one time and a second time and a third time and a fourth time as you connect with players along their cycle of development. Where, going back to what I said before, each next time they hear it, it's going to make more sense than last. And in the interim, though, we understand that guys are truly trying to get from point A to point B and figure out how to get to the ballpark. That we get all of that. So, long-winded way of saying, yes, education is important. Offering the history is important. Having it being told by guys that have been there, done that is always going to be important.
Yeah. For those listening, I want to challenge you and do this on your own time, but do you know who Curt Flood is? And if the answer to that is no, after you read who both guys are, ask yourself why. How is it possible that I don't know who those two guys are? That's what I mean when we talk about the history of the game. Yeah. It's that important.
We try to offer Curt, and we'll offer Marvin, and we'll offer Don Fear, and we'll offer Michael Weiner, and we'll offer Messersmith and McNally. We'll offer those markers, and we'll have them on the walls in our office, and we'll have them on our website for anyone that's interested in poking around, because everything we have didn't happen overnight, and as a result of guys like Curt and others who sacrificed their careers for the well-being of those that came next. And I think as folks poke around and read that history, they'll realize that's not just baseball history. That affected other sporting industries as well. And so the impact is tangible. We don't have what we have because of the kindness of those that we sit across from at the table. It is truly against the backdrop of those who paved the way for us. And so you try to tell those stories as often as you can.
What are your thoughts on the changes that we're seeing in youth sports right now with NIL and things like that? It's obviously overwhelming, I know, for a lot of these families and these kids. How do you view that, the change?
Change is inevitable, good, bad, or indifferent. I think that what's important is for mom and dad to have a resource they can go to get an answer to a question that they have, or their young player having a resource that they can go to get an answer to the question that they have. And more often than not, unfortunately, whoever's the closest is the one that they ask. And it's not an indictment of whoever those individuals may be, but there may be a reason that their answer is whatever their answer is. And so with all the changes and with all the challenges and the complications that are now associated with it, it's hard to separate fact from fiction and to differentiate between what answer may be more self-serving for that individual and or whether or not that answer is going to be personally for the well-being of their athlete or that parent. And that's why I think it's not just important, but it's crucial for us to do something that we've never done before, which is be a resource as early as we possibly can. And eventually these young people are going to play professionally. A number of them are going to play professionally. But at the very least, they're going to be fans of the game, or we want them to be fans of the game whenever their playing career stops. And I think, unfortunately, with NIL and with social media and all the great things that those things can bring with them, the truth is we're not allowing kids to be kids very, very long anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, mom and dad are a part of the equation from the standpoint it becomes more of a business and a destination than a goal and a journey. And as such, trying to navigate that is difficult. And so being a resource, positively affecting the space, affording mom and dad and the kids an opportunity to not just be supported by literally the players who are committed to ensuring that those guys and gals have it better than they have it, but the organization that provides our player support being involved in that conversation, I think is absolutely imperative for whatever's going to come next. If amid the chaos, there's going to be a proverbial light at the end of the tunnel that's going to provide support for the next generation of fans, but perhaps the next generation of professional ball players as well.
So I know the younger kids will enjoy this question. When do you start paying attention to like some of these names in the draft?
Well, I mentioned earlier my son who is playing, and who's been in the development system. I keep saying development, although it's not much about development anymore. Another conversation, perhaps, for another day. But when we wrapped the minor leaguers in, it became a part of our DNA to keep an eye on the next generation and to make sure that we're tracking it. And obviously, we negotiate over the draft, so we negotiate over the entry system by which these players are going to enter. And and so making sure that we understand who's coming next and where those kids are from and who they are connected to and what their experience was like. All of that's going to affect on the field and off the field what their careers look like. Okay, so us knowing and appreciating on some level who that next generation is important. And so again, we're reaching down further and further and pay a lot more attention now to kids, particularly once they get into high school and get to a point where they're knocking on that door.
If you were going to create a business of baseball class and you were going to be the teacher, professor, are there a few, like what are the top line things that you would want to make sure that are in that class that you're teaching?
Oof. Well, I would start with a bit of a history of baseball. That would lay the foundation for appreciating where the game is today. And so one part of the class would be a little conversation about yesterday. I wouldn't pound the pavement, but I would offer, here's what baseball used to look like, and here's how the game has morphed and changed, and here are the roles of the individuals that helped change it and move it, and here's what that looked like. And then we talk about present day. Here's what the game looks like. Here are the things that you need to pay attention to and that you're hearing and that you need to understand, while at the same time not forgetting the history behind it. And so, yes, Today's conversation is about XYZ. Yesterday's conversation was about ABC, but they're all connected. So understand yesterday and be able to speak today's language is going to put you in the best position possible to understand what tomorrow might look like. And so if I was teaching a course on baseball, I would talk about yesterday, I would talk about today, and I would talk about tomorrow, all against the backdrop of appreciating the players, the people, and the characters that support our game and have created what it is that we see today, because it's too easy to just get caught up in the numbers or to just treat a player and the contributions that he made on the field or she made off the field according to the numbers, the end all be all, and it's not. We're in the people business, always have been and will always be.
So I have a few more questions left that are more rapid fire, but is there anything that you want to talk about that we haven't touched on?
No, I think the game is in a good place. We have our challenges. We're working through those, and our hope is that we can continue to, against the backdrop of keeping the train on the tracks and moving forward in a way that's beneficial. Unfortunately, it takes two to tango in that regard, and so we'll work through that. Having said that, I think we are literally at a place where we've reached a bit of a tipping point in our industry, not at the major league level necessarily, not at the minor league level necessarily, but at the amateur level, both in youth as well as high school and college, where I think the pendulum has swung a little bit too far. And I mentioned development earlier. We've gotten away from development. There are those that are committed to it and are committed to the well-being holistically of the young person that's on the baseball field or softball field. But we're missing a few things that I think is going to require, as I highlighted earlier, our players, our organization, to interject ourselves with other like-minded people into the space to try to level set things a little bit in order to protect the game, to protect the well-being of that young person moving forward in a way that's a little bit different perhaps than what yesterday looked like.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right, so a few rapid fire questions for you. What is the proudest moment of your time leading the MLBPA?
You say rapid fire. Wow. I don't know that there is one. Much like when you're playing, you know that the team is always trying to replace you, so you're never really focused too much on the back of your bubblegum card. It's something that you look at afterward. I'm hopeful that after the fact, despite all of the challenges that we've had and all the things that we've done, that literally I will be proudest if our former players and our active players and the next generation of players are as connected as they possibly can be, ensuring that we can do whatever we want to with the game moving forward.
What is one message that you want every MLB draft pick to hear?
Alan Trammell told me when I got called up with the Tigers that the easy part was making it to the big leagues. The hard part was staying, and I didn't know what that meant. I would tell any draft pick that this is a journey. Control the things that you can control on the field and off the field, and make sure when it's all said and done that when people say your name, they do so in a way that suggests you impacted them in a positive fashion. If you do that, you will have had a good career.
I love that. I feel like you just segued perfectly into my last question. When all is said and done, how do you want to be remembered by the next generation of players?
Yeah. Again, always challenges. Things are rarely perfect, but you're hopeful. I'm hopeful that as we continue to grind and we continue to work through those challenges, that when the dust settles, our fraternity is better off when the music stops than it was the day before. If we can say that, if I can say that, then I know I will have done my job, because that was the edict from the players that took me under their wing when I first came in. It is the edict from players that run under and beneath those guys. And so it's really the only focus. It's not about self-promotion or otherwise. It is truly about ensuring that our game moves in a direction that it needs to, and our player fraternity is central to that.
Tony, thank you.
No, I appreciate the time, man.
Yeah, this was
Grateful for
great.
the opportunity to be together.